are. Good to have you with us. Mike Seigel in. We're joined by Ken Klukowski, who does terrific work in the area. We got voting issues, of course, we have to get to. But let me just wrap up on Eric Holder and Hillary Clinton. You know, I want to go back to when George Bush ran against Pat Buchanan in a primary. And Pat Buchanan said some things that the left wing got all lathered up about because they thought things he said might conjure up people from the far right, wacko radicals, who would go out and take people out who were on the left. And they were very upset about that. Well, now you have both the former Attorney General, again, the number one law enforcement official in the country, and the former presidential candidate of the Democrat Party. She was Secretary of State. She was First Lady. She was First Lady of Arkansas. She's an attorney. And she says no civility unless we win. Now, if they don't win, and you have these two people of high Democrat stature, what's the message to the common folk on the left-wing side to have them be justified in carrying out even increased violence, if that's the case?
Well, and of course, Mike, with Eric Holder, with the Attorney General of the United States, you're also talking about the chief civil rights officer of the U.S. government. There's a whole civil rights division in the Department of Justice with over 700 attorneys in it. There's only like 8 political appointees or whatnot, 700 career attorneys who are exclusively tasked with protecting the civil rights of Americans. And so to have someone in that position of all positions saying when someone's down, you kick them. I mean, that kind of violent imagery is ironically a core task of the department that he led, such that billions of dollars are put into staffing and programs to ensure that that sort of civil rights violation does not occur in this country. So the hypocrisy here is absolutely is astounding. I'm trying to use a word stronger than shameful, because the idea is that someone on such an elevated perch, I mean, we think of the Attorney General, like with Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. We think Attorney General, Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense. I mean, those are the big 4 prestige departments in the U.S. government that we think of as these towering figures that, though they are subordinate to the president, they are right up there as the foremost leaders of this nation. And they're supposed to have an agenda and to embody a vision that transcends politics and that is nonpartisan, and that is something that the entire nation can rally behind. And I got to tell you, Hillary really blew it there. I mean, if there was one post in government you should have where you should be able to get a majority of Americans to rally to your side, it's something like being Secretary of State, or in the case of Eric Holder, like being Attorney General. Yet not only is that kind of reprehensible rhetoric not considered a disqualifier these days in the modern Democratic Party, they're doing it because they think it gives them a competitive leg up. It's going to help you get the nomination to be the President of the United States if you talk about kicking people when they're down. I just think it's like Lindsey Graham said during the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. He says, I hope you never get power, because my goodness, is this what we have to look forward to?
Well, you know, look, Mr. Klukowski, Ken, with all due respect to that point, it's worse than that. How about despicable and reprehensible is 2 words? But the point is this. In the hypothetical, supposing somebody literally takes what was said and goes to, I don't even want to use a name because somebody might take it from listening to this radio show, but goes to a prominent Republican's home. Person comes out of their car in their driveway, somebody in the administration walks or goes to a restaurant, or let's make it Mitch McConnell. Someone
without a security detail.
Yeah, let's make it Mitch McConnell. And he had, I think, security with him, but they're not standing on top of him. He and his wife are having dinner in a restaurant. And by the way, it wasn't a fancy restaurant; it was a nice restaurant, but he wasn't above it all, so to speak. He was at a place where many people go. So then they're walking out, and then a guy comes along and trips him, and then uses his boot, smashes it on the majority leader's knee, and breaks his kneecap. And then maybe he can't walk healthfully for the rest of his life. He has a limp. Now, and then he says, well, Eric Holder said do it. He was the Attorney General. What's your response to that, sir?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that it's the kind of, it's like, I mean, to put this in the real big... I mean,
I just want to say that could happen, that some wacko mind would take the Attorney General, Eric Holder, literally.
And it's been happening for not just centuries, but even millennia. I mean, St. Augustine, in his famous book, perhaps the most famous Christian theologian from the first millennium of Christianity, in City of God, Augustine noted that the pagans would look to their Roman gods. They would see how Jupiter, or Zeus was his name in the Greek system, how he would go cheat on his wife. He was a serial adulterer. And they said, if we set up these men to venerate the gods, and the gods engage in such conduct, can't they look to them and say, look, if the mighty Zeus, if the mighty Jupiter does this, then how bad can it be if I'm doing it? And I'm making the point that 2,000 years later, politics works the same way. If we take people that we put on exalted pedestals and they embody a certain type of behavior, and then they essentially establish themselves as the moral norm, as the ethical standard. Sure, it empowers tens of thousands of everyday citizens can say, look, if someone who is fit to be Jupiter, if someone who's fit to be Zeus, if someone who is fit to be president of the United States acts that way, then as an everyday citizen, that's okay for me too. It sets the new norm. It coarsens society. And in a country of 320 million Americans, when we start normalizing and trivializing violent rhetoric and violent images, who knows if you might have a handful of people who are real whack jobs who take that to the next level and actually do something terrible with it.
Well, and point well made. But the other point would be that the duplicity, the double standard. Here, you don't hear Don Lemon saying a word about Eric Holder or Hillary Clinton and their civility. But what happened when Buchanan was speaking? They all went after him. Now, if you want to go after him, then why don't you go after them now? If you want to be legitimate journalists, you go after both sides or don't go after either side. Maybe some journalist out there thinks it's okay to say whatever you want and that anybody who commits violence, it's up to them and they're responsible. If somebody wants to take that position, fine. But the other side of that coin is, why do you have duplicity? It's okay for one side, but it's not okay for the other side. That's the danger that's going on in this country in the media today.
It is, and moral standards need to be universal. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I mean, if people, let's take it back another 2,000 years. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I mean, we have these things that, frankly, we were all taught as children. We were all taught in kindergarten, or for those of the Christian faith, taught in Sunday school. I mean, it's these all turn on basic principles of civility and of decency and of just basic respect, even if you disagree with your fellow, not just your fellow citizen, but really your fellow human being, if you want to get to their real fundamental dignity. And the other side, the radical left that we're seeing here, Mike, is essentially saying those who disagree with you, they're not just wrong, they're evil. They're entitled to no respect, and you don't have to treat them with respect. I think that takes our country to a dark place.
Very much so, and they're bringing it there. And we got to bring it back to the light of day and fresh air. Mike Seigel here. Good to have you with us. We come back with much more with our guest, Ken Klukowski. Stay with us.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.